gone off stretching. Now this may be an overstatement, I do still give stretching to patients. However, there is something over the last few years in the research with stretching which makes me wonder more whether stretching is quite what it's always been cracked up to be, and perhaps maybe is there a better solution. Now we know from evidence that we've spoken about on previous videos that static stretching certainly can reduce power output, strength, explosiveness and things of that nature, and therefore that's not obviously a good thing. It's hard to say if that's going to increase someone's injury risk, but we already know from research previous that static stretching or stretching itself isn't really injury preventative in itself. Now we know strength training is injury preventative, but what's also more interesting is they've now found more research, which we've discussed in a previous video as well, that if you do full range of motion strength training, you will increase flexibility equally as well as static stretching. So the question then would be why do we need to static stretch? And this is an interesting conundrum really, because really if you've got active range of motion, good range of motion, but actively so you can control it and you've got mastery of that range, that's surely better than just having a passive range but not having the strength or the control in that range. And it's also not as useful to you in general. So I've started to take this idea further forward with myself. I've been doing more things. So for example, I've been trying to progress my reverse Nordic curl, which essentially is stretching the quads. And I've also been trying to progress the depth on my Romanian deadlift, which is stretching the hamstrings. So obviously, as I get more range on these two exercises, I'm also getting more strength in that range as well. What's interesting is I was having some niggles a few months back, and for quite a long period of time, but I wouldn't say they were pain, in the quads tendon and the patella tendon on the right knee when I was in a lunge position. So I've started to progress into more of these end of range positions with more load, and these niggles have now disappeared. Now, someone could say, well, it might not be that, but I would say there wasn't anything else I overly changed. And this shows that I'm strengthening the tendons through a stretched position. We already know that eccentric strength training is really useful for tendons, and that actually is what this is going to do. So, for example, if I see someone like the other day who is limited with their hip rotation, and we know lack of hip rotation is a risk factor for groin pain and hip pain and arthritis of the hip, and we want to increase that range. So obviously before it used to be, well, we'll stretch that range. Now I'm thinking, well, maybe we should strengthen and increase the range through the strength that they have. And that's the philosophy I've been taking. And what's interesting is I've seen some people, so I had a girl who had snapping hip syndrome and hip pain, and she was a dancer. And lo and behold, within 1 week of commencing some full range of movement, hip flexor strengthening, full range of movement, internal and external hip rotation strengthening, she literally came back a week later and the snapping hip syndrome, the clicking had gone, the pain had gone, she was dancing fully and it was all fine. Now I wouldn't expect that to happen with just stretching, but because she's actually started to increase activation in ranges where she wasn't really activating muscle, she was able to jump up her strength, obviously from a neural adaptation point of view, but it also shows that being stronger in them ranges really helps. And if she continues to strengthen in them ranges, she'll really rectify the underlying issues. So this is definitely the way that I'm thinking more and more, is to strengthen a wider range of motion, go into more extreme positions gradually in a graded fashion, whether it be reverse Nordics, whether it be even like a sissy squat, whether it be a Romanian deadlift, Jefferson curls, getting more lumbar flexion, under more load, things of this nature are really useful, or long lunges as well. Now, it may well still be that I'll give stretching, for certain individuals, but it does seem like in my head, with the research and with what I'm seeing in my own self and with patients I've been seeing, that this kind of idea of trying to just increase range with strength simultaneously, which is more efficient, is a much better way of going about it. And therefore, I think stretching is going to diminish even more so as we go forward in time. And the evidence is reflecting this, and it's going to continue to reflect this, I think, as well. So yeah, I thought I'd just do a video on this one, because obviously people are always going, oh, I stretch and I do this, and now it's kind of like, don't know whether you need to. Maybe there's other ways around this and better solutions that are more effective for injury prevention and for performance benefits. So anyway, that's it for this video, and I'll see you next time.